When somebody asks you how your week has been, or maybe you're in a small group and they say, hey, what is God doing in your life? I don't know if you're like me, but my mind completely goes blank. And I just say, it's good. His goodness and his faithfulness, it just escapes me. And I wish that wouldn't happen. Sometimes I wonder, is that just our human nature, that we have this sense of forgetfulness? And that's where the devil wants to put us sometimes, because he wants us to continually forget about God's faithfulness and love and patience with us. Welcome to the Parable Podcast today. I'm Danielle Zapchenk, and today I'm going to share a little bit about what God has done in my life, what parable lessons that I'm continually learning as we head into this time of Thanksgiving. So, we have the holiday like Thanksgiving, where we have a time to draw us back to having a heart full of thanks. We don't need a holiday to do that, but this kind of just draws us back. Thanksgiving for me is so much more about turkey and stuffing and that cranberry in a can. I love a good charcuterie board on a holiday, but it is so much more than that. It is about family and reflection and just seeing God's faithfulness throughout the years. So a couple things that I wanted to talk about is sometimes when I have my time with God, I just want to be able to listen. Sometimes I just don't know what to do. My heart just feels either empty, maybe it feels sad, maybe I just kind of feel scattered. That's most of the time. So I like to put on different worship music. One of the band's, worship teams that I really enjoy lately is Maverick City Worship. And they have this song called Promises. And the first line for them out of their song, it comes from Psalm 119:90, which says, "Your faithfulness continues through all generations. You establish the earth and it endures." And so one thing that I think about that is God has established the earth. It continues to move. It keeps going. And sometimes it just feels like for us that enduring is hard. As humans, going through different seasons or going through different hardships. A pastor the other day in church was talking about enduring. We all have to endure something, different seasons, different points of our life. And that continues to make us stronger. It continues to refine us and grow in our hearts. And so I believe that helps us endure and understand God's faithfulness, that the earth continues to go on until Jesus someday returns. But in the meantime, we will endure and God will be there to sustain us. One of the messages I wanted to share is from a recent event that I was at. And I just feel we just need to share our stories, right? This is what the whole podcast is about. So I often feel like I'm not good enough. And you're like, Danielle, really? And it's true. Like maybe you face that same feeling, like you don't measure up and you wonder, does my story, do certain parts of my own story matter? Does God even care about the little things that feel very big to me? And let me tell you that all of my small moments and the relationships in my life, they have slowly built up over time. And whether they've been positive or negative, they've seeped into my thoughts and they've become a part of me, whether I've asked them to or not. So one of the times I started feeling not good enough was when I was 16. And I remember it well, being told by my best friend that I was too much. I needed to suppress my joy, the person who God created me to be. Did I have some finessing to do as a teenager? Yes, I'm sure we all do. I don't know if the whole cerebral cortex is even formed then, but I began as a 16-year-old to second guess and doubt my decisions. And it wasn't overnight. It happened over time. And I don't always believe that this was intentional on the other person's part. I sometimes wondered, how is it that she makes me feel this way, like I'm not good enough, but yet we still have fun. She loved Jesus, but I just believe that she had her own past hurts that spilled over into our relationship, and my heart became collateral damage. It was a cycle that I didn't realize I put myself into. College came, and even miles away couldn't prepare me for the final blow that became our breaking point. God helped me finally realize that this isn't healthy, and I ended our friendship. Or so I thought, because those flippant words of not being good enough, they were still playing on repeat. They popped into my head when I was at my job, I was navigating marriage, or even changing diapers. It was just always there. So why was I holding on to these little things? Because I'm pretty sure I was the only one that was still hashing this over in my head. So to the person not feeling good enough because you've been burned by a past friendship or relationship, to the person who feels inadequate and small, to the person who easily compares and thinks, I'm the only one who focuses on the past. Let me tell you, I've been there and I've questioned. It is so hard to stop listening to the lies of the past when they have become ingrained on your heart. A few weeks ago, I was in a small group having a conversation about sharing the truth with those we love, even when it is difficult. And to my left was my new friend, Carrie. And I don't know about you, but creating friendships as an adult, it is hard because life calls you to so many tasks and responsibilities. And that good enough signal, I thought, is this friendship, is this even worth it? Because building friendship, it is slow and it takes time and effort. Carrie shared her story and in turn gave an opportunity to share a little bit of mine. A story that overall, it kind of seems quite simple, complex, but compared to others, I thought, is this really a big deal? It is, because it has shaped who I am today. After I got home that night, I knew I had to let Carrie know something. I don't know about you, but there are just certain names that stick with you over time, names that hold onto memories, good or bad. And, I even think back to when we're naming our kids, I asked my husband, I'm like, well, what about this name? And he's like, well, that person was a bully to me in kindergarten. So, we have these silly things where names hold these memories for us. And Carrie, it was also the name of my high school best friend. It was late, but I felt like God said, send it. So I texted her and I let her know that she is one of the most generous, honest, encouraging humans. And I am so grateful for this friendship. It was one Carrie that broke my heart 20 years ago. But now this present day Carrie has redeemed that name for me, and I am so honored to call her friend. This one little moment of time, it helped me heal. And 20 years later, 20 years, it mattered. But God wasn't done because there's always more to the story with him, right? Carrie responded back asking if I would believe that the best friend that she shared about, the one that had caused her so much pain and hurt, well, her name was also the same as mine, Danielle. If I could go back now and encourage myself, I would share that God, he is in the details of our life. And when we wonder if he cares about those little things, the words that were said 20 years ago, don't let that flicker of hope be extinguished. If a friendship has run its course or it's in a weird place, know that he hasn't forgotten you. I still struggle and I often forget that our story, it matters to him. He doesn't forget. God is faithful at redeeming us piece by piece, friendship by friendship. And sadly, I have had a few of these instances over my life. And God reminds me that we are human. We will fail each other. However, he never fails you. He's blessed me with women who see me and love me for who I am, flawed and all. And we may never live up to the world's standards, but he is always enough for each one of us. So it is so scary, right? To have the courage to keep putting your heart out there and just know that we need you. There's more to your story because he has called us to continue to share it with others in community, in the coffee shops, even in the toilet paper aisle, in those late night texts when you wonder, should I even send this? Your big or little story matters. There's always going to be more to your story because he is faithful, even when we can't see what is up ahead. I encourage you to continue to build, to fight for, and foster friendships because when those past lies rear its ugly head, and let me tell you, they will, you're going to look to your right and your left, and you're going to see friends linking arms with you and holding you up, people that believe that you are more than enough, that point you towards Jesus as you continue to unravel and discover there's so much more to your story. The second thing I wanted to share with you is to remember the small things. And I feel like you could walk into a Hobby Lobby and there would be 45 signs of, be grateful for the little things in life. Again, this is just a gentle reminder for myself and for all of us to really remember the small ways that God is faithful. One of the things lately is, just watching my son's face as he is telling a story or he's trying to explain to me how this pocket knife works. He's gotten into whittling lately and it cracks me up. It's so funny. And, instead of just glossing over on those moments, I just trying to hold tight to that, to be present and to say thank you in this moment. So I would just encourage you to take the time to acknowledge, to find that in the everyday, because I think as we're going, we forget to slow down. I know I do. And just experience life, experience all the things that God has blessed us with, even in the hard and the difficult seasons. So He's there. It's just having that willingness to look. There was the episode of Ivy Lassiter, and her mom, Sweet, had passed away. And during her wedding, she just wished that her mom could be there. And afterwards, she had seen the word mom spelled out in the auditorium where they got married. I mean, I've shared that story so many times. And I think that's what we're doing. That's what parable stories are about. It's continually sharing these stories, because if we keep them locked away in a box, or if we don't tell anyone or celebrate these small moments, then we forget. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit. But one kind of story that kind of helps me understand thankfulness and God's faithfulness is our daughter went into 7th grade this year. And when she found out the classrooms, the pods, whatever she is in, her groups, a lot of her friends were in other ones. And that, to a 12-year-old, it was a tragedy. And words were getting thrown around with this is not going to be a great year. This is going to be the absolute worst. It's not going to be like 6th grade. And, I have to stifle my laughter after a while because it's just very dramatic. And I get that because I can be like that too with God, maybe just not to outside to other people, but we can get in that place of just being like, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. And it's never, ever going to get fixed, or we're never going to figure it out. And in that moment, I told her, I said, Edie, let's put a note in my calendar for 2 months. And let's see at that 2-month mark what God has done, how God has changed your heart. And she's like, oh, Mom, of course, why would a mom do such a thing? But I did it. I didn't care what she said. And, that 2-month mark has come, and 7th grade has been awesome. It's been so great for her. And there's been so many fun opportunities. Of course, she still gets to see her friends, but I think it's in those moments where tragedy or hardship or hurt happens. I'm not trying to demean that in any way, but we need to be mindful of God is going to use that. He is going to endure, and just know that He is there, and something is going to happen. And sometimes we can't fully understand that. And in Edie's situation, I mean, this is a very small way of doing that. And so I wanted to give you 3 options of how you can help yourself be reminded of God's faithfulness. So one would be that just put a note in your calendar, put a description with it, because you're going to be like, what is this note about God's faithfulness? And so maybe you want to ask yourself a certain question, put it at 2 months, put it at 4 months. You can decide the amount, because I think what happens is, not to say that in 2 months it's going to be perfectly fixed, but what it's going to do is to see, how has your heart changed? Have you aligned yourself with God? And is there a sense of hope? Have you seen something coming up around the corner? Another option is keeping a prayer journal. I just keep a notebook sometimes, and I just write some random stuff down. And I like to flip through that, because when I go back and look at it, usually it's laughter, but also there is a sense of overwhelming gratitude, because God is working, and we just have that human mindset that we forget so often. And then the third thing would be, if you prefer taking pictures, I shared this with our church the other week in announcements, that sometimes I take pictures of the sad and hard moments, because that's how I can visually see. Like, on Instagram, you can see everyone's beautiful pictures over and over and over. And so when I look at my camera roll, there's so many fun, good moments, but there are also the hard moments too. So just seeing that juxtaposition of, yeah, there's some hardship, but God used it. He worked through it. And maybe I'm still trying to figure it out, but those would be just a couple of things. So looking at your photo reel, if you prefer photos, and then just having a prayer journal to see those reminders, and then also putting reminders into your phone. So whatever one works for you, great. If you have another one, I'd love to hear about it. That'd be awesome. And finally, my third thought for you today is it's about a toilet paper holder. So a couple years ago, I had to put a new toilet paper holder in our master bath. And it's the one that it turns up so you can simply put toilet paper onto it and then fold it back down. I was hoping that more people, when it was empty, that they would put the toilet paper on. That part still hasn't worked 100% of the time. But when I was initially installing it, because of course, no studs are going to be in that area, I had to put those anchors in. And I don't remember if the wall was weird or if I was just getting a little overzealous. I ended up making the hole too big. So then I had to put those a very large plastic anchor into the wall for a toilet paper holder. And it wasn't perfect. But I'm like, you know what? It's good enough. And so I put it in. We did our bathroom stuff for a couple of years. And then over time, that one anchor that was a little wonky, it started to pull away from the wall. And I'm just like, oh, it's going to be fine. And then it just kept pulling and pulling and pulling. And 2 years later, I'm like, okay, finally, I guess take it out. We'll get another one and we'll have to adjust. And when I took it out, it left a ridiculously giant hole in the wall where one of these anchors were. And in my mind, the new toilet paper holder that I got, it had a sticky option. So you could just pop it right over the top of that hole. And I thought to myself, I could do that. That's the easy way of just making sure I don't have to paint anything. I don't have to look at this hole anymore. I don't have to try to re-anchor anything in here. So I got this little patch thing and it's fine. We still have toilet paper in our master bath if that's what your concern is. Everything's fine. But as I was looking at it, because this is the way my brain thinks, I was looking at it sometimes we have these hurts or we have these maybe just small pieces of our life where it's not perfect and we just try to fit things in the right way. Like that anchor was, we just kind of put it in there and it is a temporary fix, but it's not good enough. We haven't maybe taken all of our things to Jesus because we think oh, it's not big enough. I will hang on to it. I will hold on to it. I'm going to hold it all together. And so over time, what happens is it deteriorates. It is not strong enough. It is not lasting. And so then we have to take it out and then we have this huge gaping hole in our hearts and our emotions and we have to sit with that. And so what do? Do we just kind of slap something else on, to stick over it? Or do we put in the work? Do we get out that spackle and kind of heal that area? And I think that takes time. It could take 2 days. It could take 20 years, that process of healing. I'm just so grateful that God, even though that we have tried to fix and mold and shape and try to control certain situations in our life, that God has allowed us the opportunity to say, you know what, this is not right. This is not how He intended it for us, that we can go to Him and we can say, hey, I need you to help me heal this. That is my story about a toilet paper holder and how, God is faithful. He is good. He hears us. Again, back to Psalm 119, verse 90, your faithfulness continues through all generations. You establish the earth and it endures. God's faithfulness endures. And sometimes I just thought when I read that, and when it says through all generations, sometimes we're going to see that work, maybe that hardship, it was birthed within us, but it is going to be seen in future generations, in future friendships, in future relationships, in future children. and that fruitfulness will come, just not maybe in the way that we imagined it to. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me and listening how I imagine my parable stories to be. Listen, I'd love to connect with you. And if you want to find me on socials, you can find me at Danielle Zapchenk. That is Zapchenk. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, or you can head over to daniellezapchenk.com for more. For those of you that want to dive into a time of reflection, here are 2 takeaway questions. Number 1, when you are gathered around your table with family or friends, or maybe just you and someone you love, think about what is one thing that you are truly thankful for in this season. I'd love for you to send that out to your family and friends and just be like, we're going to go around the table and celebrate and be thankful about what God is doing in our lives. So that's an opportunity for you. Number 2, what is something that is being compromised in your life? Kind of like that plastic anchor in the wall. Maybe you have not allowed it to heal. And so thankfulness has not become an option for you. How can you shift that mindset of being grateful to God? How can you allow Him to have a little bit more control in your life? How can you shift that mindset for you this week? Thank you so much for listening. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on Apple, Spotify, or even over on YouTube. And if you leave a rating or review, I would be ever so thankful. And thanks so much to my technical producer of a husband, Eric, for editing this podcast today. That is going to do it. I appreciate you spending time with me. And remember, your parable showcases His faithfulness that He has for you, whether it is in 2 days or 20 years. We'll see you back again next week on the Parable Podcast.